chapter 9. Okay, it's the laws of tzitzis. Now, some of them we might end up summarizing a little bit because it's going to get quite technical. But Aleph number 1, Gedoyla mitzvah tzitzis. The mitzvah of tzitzis is tremendous. Why? The Torah, in effect, compares it to all the other mitzvahs. It's like equal, all the other mitzvahs depend on tzitzis. How is that? Shnamaz says, "Orisim oisoi." You'll look at them. You look at the tzitzis. The schatim is called mitzvahs Hashem, and then you're going to remember all the mitzvahs of Hashem. So we see the Torah tells us that by just seeing them is going to help us remember the mitzvahs of Hashem. Now, how does that work? The tzitzis, the gematria, tafresh. The gematria, the numerical value of the word at tzitzis is 600. Shemaina chutim, then we have 8 strings, at least per corner. So it was 608. The chamishik sharim, and there's 5 knots. So 600 shari taryag, this is 613. So every time we see the tzitzis, if we're actually being conscious of what we're looking at, we realize it reminds us of the 613 mitzvahs. Now, just like some of the other mitzvahs, women are born with a greater spiritual sensitivity, and they don't need the constant reminder. To describe the difference, at least in this lifetime, I wasn't a few years a man, a few years a woman, and then different things. Although some people think you can do that nowadays, but whatever it is. So I can't describe to you the exact difference. But we're told that women have what's called bina yesera, a greater awareness of spirituality, and therefore they weren't required to do this mitzvah. Therefore, sarich kol ish lo yidnizeh sheyeh lo talis cotton shemubash boy kol hayom. Every man should be scrupulous. They should be careful. The entire day they should wear a talis cotton, a small talis. So what we just call tzitzis today, and they should wear it the entire day. Now it should be wool, sheep's wool. Okay, we're going to discuss soon if it's other materials, different things. But in the ideal world, it should be sheep's wool. It should be white, and it should be larger than the minimum size. What's the minimum size? The Haino shloisha of the amma ba'orech v'chatzi amma b'roichav. It's 3/4 of an amma. An amma is about about 1.5 feet. So 3/4 of that long and 1.5 wide. Sorry, half, not 1.5. That would be very big tzitzis, 1.5 wide, right?
Half an amma wide.
Yeah, in width. Yeah.
So 9 inches wide.
Yeah.
So
that's what he's saying is the minimum.
Is this a scarf? How are you wearing this? Are you putting this around your neck?
No,
or your head through it?
So the 1.5 long, but for the entire length should be half wide.
Right. I'm imagining holding it up and putting my head into it.
Yeah.
It is a half an amma wide, so it's about 10 inches wide, less than a foot wide. My head barely goes into that. And then an amma and a half long. So it'll be up to here. When I put it down finally, it's only
should go to your waist.
On each side. It's where my waist. How does it stretch from my head to my waist with less than 18 inches?
Okay, so that is the minimum size.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The minimum
that's the rules. Now I was going to mention that the Shulchan Aruch Rav, right? So the Alter Rebbe says it should be a amma. needs to be not 3/4 of an amma, but one whole amma. But we'll also mention. So that's why he has that's one of the reasons why he rules you should have the round neck and not the V neck, because the V doesn't count in the shear. So those who wear the V neck, so let's say the V neck only becomes closed, let's say at their sternum. So the length only starts from there. Then it has to go an amma or 2/3 of an amma to 3/4 of an amma lower than that. So and if you have the round neck, which is Chabad amongst others have, then the shear starts from, so where you're talking about where your head goes through, the shear starts from where the hole ends, and it's going to be on both sides, the front and back. The shear. Okay. So that's the minimum size. Now it also depends on the size of the person. Just to mention, right? So very taller person or is going to need more. So on that, what's okay? V'oisem she'oisem is talis cotton tofim and tzedodim. Should also those who make it sewing its sides together. In other words, they make it like a shirt. Called tzad pesuach roiv hanir l'naim. You have to make sure that both sides are left open. The majority of both sides are left open. Now, even with hooks, right? In those days, people used to look like an iron, a hook instead of a button type thing. Even then, you shouldn't join it. So today, there are companies that sell sitzers with it's like click. It's not really a button. It's, like sometimes they're on jackets or jeans. Like clicks close. Snaps. Okay, yeah. So sometimes they sell those, and so we should have majority open. It could be a little bit closed, but that's the majority of the side. Gam yahay kol adam niza shia loy talis gadol, but sishateif by v'shas tefillah. Now, besides this small garment that we're wearing, as well as that, a person should have a large talus that he can wrap himself up for davening, right? So although technically one's called talus gadol, the big talus, and one's called talus cotton, the small talus. In slang today, we call the smaller one the sitzes, even though both of them have sitzes attached. That's the strings. And we call the big one, we just call it a talus without necessarily calling it a big talus. So what we commonly call a talus, that's every person should have that as well. However, I'll just point out to you, when they do a fire sale in someone's estate, let's say the Beis Din doesn't really have the ability to do this nowadays, but in concept in Jewish law, there's someone who owes debts and he doesn't have the money, so the Beis Din will sell his assets. So you have to leave him a minimum. You have to leave him 30 days food, a year's worth of clothes. You have to leave him his tefillin. So you only have to leave the small talus. Don't have to leave the big one. You can sell it if need be. Right? So it's important, but only one is essential. And a person should try and have a nice talus. Right? So again, everyone within their means, but and there's been plenty of times in Jewish history where if one had sewn up 5 times in 3 patches, that was considered pretty good. It was. But in the ideal world, one should have a nice talus, and as we learned in the laws of Shabbos, even if you can have a different one for Shabbos, and sometimes people put on silverware and stuff on them, really pretty them up. But whatever, it's as long as we do it for the honor of the mitzvah, not the honor of ourselves. Some people put a nice piece of silver for the honor of the mitzvah of Shabbos and the Talis, and there's some people who put it on for the honor of themselves. So it's as long as you do it for the right reasons. Not I'm saying you have to do it, but if you do it, it should be for the right reasons. And another reason why we should try to have a nice talis is because every mitzvah, we should make every mitzvah as nice as possible. As nice as possible. Dichsiv, as it says, there's a verse, Ze Keli Va'anvehu. Right? Literally, this is my God, and I'll glorify him. With our Shinam, we learn out from here, he's Sa'an and Lafon of mitzvahs. So how do you glorify God? By doing his mitzvahs in the nicest way. So this is everything. So when you buy a mezuzah, for an example, to try and have the nicest, very nice writing, not a sloppy writing. Should be a nice size,
not just the box on the outside.
That's right. And and some people particularly don't get expensive boxes. Some people get the plastic see-through boxes because they want the beauty to be the mezuzah itself, right? Of course, if they're doing that just because that happened to be cheaper, it's again a lot of these things depends on our motivation. But the box is secondary. It's a true story. A friend of mine, such a good friend of mine, and speak to him in 30 years. But we were very good friends. But he went to Brisbane. I'm going to call it like Wyoming or something in America. Like a place. There's a few Jews there, but it's not really exactly a large Jewish metropolis. And he went to visit Jewish families. And there was one family, and they had a very nice large mezuzah cases. And he says to them, we've got nice mezuzahs. Yes, we got them in Israel. He said, would you like me to check them for you? You want to make them feel good about the mitzvah? I said, sure. So he takes them down, opens them up. The cases are empty. There's no mezuzah inside. He says,
they threw the instructions away.
That's what they told him. Yeah, they told him. He says, where's the writing inside? He says, oh, you mean the Hebrew instructions? We didn't understand them, so we threw it away. So it's become
they probably had nice ones too. Yeah,
it's become a very famous story since then. But that's it happened to him. So the main thing is, of course, the scroll should be beautifully written and written by. You should really only, by the way, get a mezuzah from someone you know. It's a big challenge because many of us don't know someone who writes, and we go to Judaica stores. And even the Judaica stores, even if you trust the owner as a good guy, it doesn't mean he knows anything about mezuzahs because it's a specialized field. And, it's one of those things. Same with tefillin. Well, you should get from someone that you know, or if you get it from a middleman, that they know the scribe. Because so many things can go wrong that you can't tell after the fact. So, for an example, mezuzahs be written in order. If it's any letter out of order, so let's say someone skipped a letter, added in later. So, if they did it reasonably soon afterwards, you can't tell after it's finished. So, there could be someone, if they're not totally honest, that they made a mistake and they'd almost finished it, and it's going to, that's $100 down the drain. So it's a big challenge for them. Everyone has a Yetzer Hara, so you need someone who happened to one of my sons, not the one who gave you the Sufis class. The other one, he'd got to like the last line, and he realized because if he stops in the middle before he starts again, he gets a check over, and he realized he made a mistake. That's it. It's gone. You have to put into Shemus and to be buried. Add Hashem's name, so you can't. But it happens. Even the best sofer will make a mistake from time to time. That's why sofer always tries to get someone else to check it before they will sell it. But anyway, so all our mitzvahs, we're trying to do them as beautifully as possible. So we don't just get the half dried up lulav and esrog. Now again, in Europe, often you had one lulav and esrog per town instead of lulav and esrog per town. We're talking about in the old days, and sometimes you had to preserve it from last year because they didn't have refrigerated planes and ships to ship things. was very difficult to get. But in today's world, Baruch Hashem, we can get nice things. It's my grandmother had brass Shabbos candles. Right, that was fancy in those days because people didn't have the same standard of living. Today, okay. I mean, I know someone has their grandmother's brass. It's like a family heirloom, so it's important. But today, people get silver, at least silver plated or something. Most people can get, not everyone, but I'm using an example. Many people can, so that everyone can afford something is also not true. But as an example, things that were out of the reach of everyone has become in the reach of most. At least the silver plated. Doesn't have to be massive. Same menorahs. People used to have tin menorahs or, and different things. And today, people, Baruch Hashem, can have nice ones. And the strings that you buy for the actual tzitzis, you have to make sure you get it from a trustworthy person because they have to be spun and twisted for the sake of the mitzvah. Right? You can't just buy regular wool for that. The clothing can be regular wool, but the tzitzis, the strings, had to be spun and twisted into strings for the sake of the mitzvah. And we also have to make sure that they're long enough. Right? They're long enough to be able to tie up properly. It's base. So he's only got a linen garment. He can't get a wool garment. He only has a linen. Now, if he's going to put wool and strings, then it's going to be a mixture of wool and linen, even though for talis is not necessarily the biggest issue. There is an opinion that he should make the corners of leather and then put the woolen strings from. Then those who dispute this, generally the accepted view is that if you have linen garment, you can have woolen tzitzis, or vice versa. But ideally, they should be made out of the same material as the garment, which can create certain issues with cotton tzitzis. So just to mention, I know many people in the Shir live in warmer climates. Right? Many people in this class live in warmer climates. And sometimes woolen tzitzis can be a little bit... Sorry, Susan, your hand up?
Yes, Rabbi. If someone is allergic to wool, or blankets, any kind of something from the sheep, what do you do?
Well, I guess then they have they get linen.
They have everything in linen. In other words,
well, the linen, I guess, for the big talus, and the smaller ones, they're probably gonna have cotton. So I was just going to mention cotton. That's we're going to learn later. Okay. Well, it's not necessarily okay. Well, okay. There's two aspects to it. One aspect is that a four-corner garment needs tzitzis. So in that respect, it's cotton. It has four corners. It needs tzitzis. Then this respect, is this the mitzvah I can make a bracha on? And cotton is not so straightforward for that. So many, I'll just finish this question. Many married men.
Linen is straightforward, correct?
Yeah. So many married men who wear now wearing a talus, a large talus for davening, they're only going to make one bracha. They're not going to make a separate bracha on the small ones and not on the big one. Many people have the custom to only make on the big one. In which case, so it doesn't really matter whether your small one is eligible for a bracha or not. And that's the reason why many people are lenient to wear cotton, or they make a bracha on a woolen one and then change, or different things. And there is an opinion you can make a bracha on a cotton one also. So it's not the, so those who are in a hot climate where they really need the lighter weight anyway, or in the case that you said that someone's the allergic, the wool gives them a reaction. So we can rely on the cotton. Nylon is a bigger problem. It's better to get cotton ones, not nylon ones. So just to mention that. Hey, yeah, Moshe. Sorry, was Moshe going to ask a question?
Yes. What's the best way to clean the tzitziot?
The best way to actually get them clean, we're talking about wool ones, is probably take to a dry cleaner. Sure. And of course, everyone knows that bad joke.
Why would they need to be cleaned? I don't understand.
Because you sweat.
Oh.
You sweat. You have let's say a Shabbos talus and or a weekday. A weekday, and you wear it for a year. So I got a brand new one I wore it my son-in-law's call up, before my daughter got married. And at the kid, the someone spilled grape juice on it. So, I had it 1 week, had to get it dry cleaned. They did a good job. It came straight out. But it's, so that's to get it clean. Everyone knows the bad joke. The guy takes it to the dry cleaner. He's talus and he gets $1,000 bill. He says, $1,000 for dry cleaning? He says, no, $20 for dry cleaning. $80 for unpicking all those knots. That's
untying the nuts.
Yeah. So but hand washing also can work.
What a comedian you are, Rabbi.
Yes, he's very good. Rabbi, just while we have a few minutes, if you don't mind. Oh, sorry.
Okay, I'll just be very quick. What about for shotness? Do you take it to have a check for shotness also?
Yeah, but probably if you're buying a talus from a place that, a lot of them come with a hechsher. So, so they're generally pretty good. Generally pretty good. So therefore you don't have to worry about those things. But other clothes, today with nylon threads, it's not the same issue, unless you're getting sort of more expensive suits. But most communities normally have someone that checks.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems.
Rabbi?
Yeah, Isaac, yeah.
If I may, just before we all leave, you mentioned that today was the yahrzeit of Rabbi Gansfried from the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch.
Yes.
And I am laughing because 20 years ago, when I was doing legal work for the Aleph Institute in prison, I wrote a book called The Institutional Handbook of Jewish Practice and Procedure. And this is for the Federal Bureau of Prisons. It was a guide for wardens on what Jews needed in prison to fulfill their needs. This way, if an inmate came in, I need this and this and this, and the warden wanted to know if this is emes or not, because they'd come up with all kinds of stuff. I wrote this handbook for them to be able to use. And we sold it to the Bureau of Prisons. It was a big thing. What I used as a source was the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. I sat through with it, and I said, every single halacha here, what could a warden possibly be in a situation to observe that he would have to know to let a Jew do? He doesn't have to know about carrying on Shabbos. He doesn't have to know about shaving, on Shabbos with these shilas. And we put together the handbook. I was looking for it now, because I know I have an old copy, or at least an advertising brochure from back when, since 20 years ago. So that was from Gansfried. Today is also the yahrzeit, I believe, for anyone who's here in South Florida, of Rabbi Pinchas Weberman, who is the first yahrzeit, who was a gadol, and beyond the gadol, for Miami Beach, and set up and built really the Orthodox community in Miami Beach. He was the Arab, he did it. And until years ago, he rode around on the beaches on his, I forget what it's called.
Those four-wheel bike things, yeah.
The tricycle, the big motorized tricycles, checking the Arab. He was a friend to every police agency. Over the last 10 years, I worked very closely with him. He called me in on a lot of different cases. and he got a kick out of me because his father was a big lawyer. So we used to schmooze about a lot of different things. But one thing people don't even realize that he was most important for as far as the life of every Jew here in South Florida. I accompanied him for years as we went city by city, town by town, whatever you want to call it, village by village, to Miami Beach, North Miami Beach, Surfside, Aventura, Miami Gardens, 11 different communities in the area, and sat down with the police and fire departments in each one of them to explain to them our idea of putting together Hatzalah. I mean, other guys that put together Hatzalah, they wanted to bring it in from New York.
Yeah.
The problem was there had never been a Hatzalah here in Florida. And in many cases, Miami-Dade had the lock-on fire rescue, and they still do in some ways, but we managed to skirt around it. But for years, he went to each, and he was friends with a lot of the police people, whatever, and it was only because of his work that today we have South Florida Hatzalah, which is now, I think, 150 members or responders. Wow. And we've done over 15,000 lives that have been saved since we started almost 10 years ago, quietly. And by the time they woke up and saw that we were here, Baruch Hashem, we were here.
Oh, so, I've got to say, it's his yard side. I didn't have a lot to do with him, but I was had a little bit to do. And one time I was in a summer camp, and there were complications to build the Eruv. Of course, the camp directors didn't realize there was any complication because everyone just thinks it's so straightforward. So at the time, I knew enough to realize there was a potential issue, but not enough to know what to do about it. So I called a few people and they said, look, you got to call Rabbi Webman. He's going to, all right? So I get on the phone with him and he asks me, first, he says, how do you expect me to answer when I can't see what's there? I said, I don't know. He says, all right, let me give you a shear. All right, so he gave me a whole shear, and then I was questions, and that was the beginning. That was my introduction into that field, and it was very helpful onwards after that as well. So a lot of patience was always there.
Yep. I miss him. And we just all have to be aware of what we owe him in terms of out of the blue areas you never thought of. He did it here for Florida. Yeah. I had the schus. It was about 2 years before he passed. They had a dinner in his honor, and Baruch Hashem, they gave me the opportunity to introduce him. And he's a good guy, a rarity.
I lost connection. I think we're back.
Baruch Hashem.
All right. Well, wish everyone a wonderful week. And even though it's early, a wonderful Shabbos, and it's a problem I'll speak to you between now and then. And we'll see you all next week, God willing. Take care.
Gesund, everybody.
Stay safe.
Yeah, it's a Chodesh this week.
Yep. Have a good month.
On